Hey everyone, Israel is currently in a war against the terror organization Hamas, and we know how hard it can be to keep up with all the news. So if you haven't had the time to stay on top of the latest developments out of Israel, we're here for you. I'm Ladar Gavelazi, and this is ILTV's Weekly Review.
And the IDF just issued one of its largest evacuation warnings yet since fighting resumed in the Gaza Strip today, with thousands of people in Rafah leaving during the Muslim holiday of Eid al-Fitr. Joining us now to discuss is Dr. Eyal Pinko, an intelligence, cyber, and security expert. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Now, this morning, the IDF issued a massive evacuation order to all of Rafah, pretty much, with the IDF saying they will, quote, be returning to fighting with, quote, great force. We know the IDF included an area between Rafah and Khan Yunis, which is a location the IDF necessarily hasn't really operated in since the beginning of this war. What is the IDF working to achieve here?
Yeah, I think what we see that the IDF, while changing the commanding officer of the IDF, changed the strategy. And before that, with General Halevi time, it was some kind of riots the strategy. Go inside, make some small and shorter time operation going out. Now, from what we see now, the IDF operates totally different. And we see that the IDF is preparing to operate for a long and massive operation inside Gaza, which will be, in the part of the northern Gaza, in separate, and the center of Gaza as well, in two separate lines that will divide it, the part that Hamas has more influence and the part that Hamas has less influence, in order to gain control of the territory.
How extensive do you think this ground operation will be? We know that we've been hearing some soldiers are being called up for the reserve duty here in Israel. How long do you think this ground operation will take? And should we expect more soldiers to be called up?
Yeah, look, Israel really wants that this operation will not take place. Israel wants the hostages, and this is the reason that there is, for the last month or so, there is a huge effort, first in the political arena, and secondly with other means of pressure, for example, disconnecting the electricity that Israel gives to Hamas, and not to send any more trucks with medical supplies, food and all, in order to create pressure on Hamas. Even though Israel is not sending them, Hamas has, for now, all the means to feed and to give the treatment to the population, and therefore Israel waits that this pressure, the energetic and all the other supply will work. And if this will not work, I believe that we will see that there is a massive Israeli military moves, as we saw in the past. No real delegation, no real negotiation is really helpful. The only thing that helped to save and to bring back the hostages were only massive military operations. And I believe that, once again, if the first phase that we are now into will not work, Israel will go to a massive military maneuver in the Gaza Strip.
Now, switching gears, we've seen unprecedented anti-Hamas protests take place in the Gaza Strip last week for 2 days in a row. The family of one 22-year-old man in Gaza said their son was murdered after participating in one of these protests. They say he was kidnapped, tortured, and his body was left in front of his family's home. Do you think these protests could continue sometime soon?
Look, I believe that Hamas is controlling everything in the Gaza Strip. So if there are demonstrations over there, I do believe that some of them were organized by Hamas to show the world, to show Israel, to show mainly to the US that, Hamas is trying to move to a better place. I believe that Hamas is very well in control in this territory. So it means that a real thing that will come from the population will not be. And we saw in many cases that voting and polls that are being made or being done in the Gaza Strip in the past, more than 87% of the Gaza population totally support Hamas.
Now, Israelis woke up this morning to watch the testimonies of these released hostages speaking in this 60-minute interview. Basically and realistically, how can Israel get these hostages out? Do you think it's possible that the IDF could try one of these daring rescue operations again to save their lives?
Look, I think that Hamas doesn't want to release the hostages. The strategy of Hamas is to take the time to make it as a gummy, and this is the playground of Hamas. This is the psychological warfare. This is the psychological terror that Hamas is imposing. As much people go to the streets in Israel protesting against the government, Hamas likes it very much. And this is Hamas' will.
We know Hamas uses these hostages as leverage in this war. Thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Red alert sirens sounded throughout central Israel from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem Sunday morning, sending millions of Israelis into bomb shelters. The IDF said it intercepted a ballistic missile that was launched by the Houthis in Yemen before it crossed into Israeli territory. Magen David Adom said 2 people were injured running to bomb shelters. The Iranian-backed Houthis have pledged to continue firing missiles at Israel so long as Israel operates in Gaza against Hamas. This despite multiple U.S. strikes on Houthi targets in Yemen. On Friday, CENTCOM announced additional strikes against the terror group.
Released hostage Elia Cohen is breaking his silence, speaking publicly for the first time about captivity in an interview with Israel's Channel 12. He issued a heartfelt plea to Israeli leaders to do more to bring the remaining hostages back home. ILTV's Mayan Hoffman has the story.
Former hostage Elia Cohen shared his story publicly for the first time last night. In a powerful interview it aired on Israel's Channel 12, the 27-year-old who spent 505 days in captivity described the horrific conditions he endured: chained underground, near starvation, injured, and emotionally broken. He detailed the October 7th attack, his abduction, and the harrowing survival alongside fellow hostages, including Alon Ohel, who remains in Gaza.
השרשראות מאוד מאוד צמוד. השרשראות חותכות לך את הרגליים. אתה הולך לשירותים ולוקח לך 10 דקות להגיע לשירותים. הסיטואציה היחידה שמורידים לך את השרשראות ברגליים זה נטו שאתה הולך להתקלח. אתה רואה אותם עם חיוך על הפנים של... אתה מבין שזה חרטה, אתה מבין שהם סתם באו לדפוק עליך סטלבט, אבל אתה אומר בונה, כאילו לאיזה רמות אפשר לרדת.
אין יותר נאצי מזה.
לא, אין יותר נאצי מזה.
There are human beings underground, he said in a message to Israel's leaders. Find a solution. Continuing the fighting is a death sentence. Elia's recovery, both physical and psychological, is far from over. He still struggles with hearing loss, pain, and the emotional toll of captivity. But his courage to speak out is a voice for those who can't. Every day I spent there, I promised myself I'd get home, Elia said. And I promised alone I wouldn't stop fighting until he does too.
President Trump is turning up the heat on Iran, threatening unprecedented bombing and fresh sanctions if Tehran refuses to strike a nuclear deal. The explosive remarks are President Trump's first ones since Iran rejected direct negotiations with the U.S. last week. ILTV's Mayan Hoffman has the latest.
Well, thank you, Shosh. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to attack Iran and implement additional economic sanctions on the country if Iran continues to refuse to negotiate toward a nuclear deal. Let's take a look.
In an interview with NBC News, Trump said if they don't make a deal, there will be bombing the likes of which they have never seen before. The comments mark a sharp escalation in rhetoric following Iran's recent rejection of direct talks with the U.S. Trump added that secondary tariffs could also be imposed, penalties targeting other nations that continue trading with Iran, similar to those that he used during his first term. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei responded on Monday saying that the U.S. would receive a strong blow if it acts on Trump's threat. At the same time, Iran responded through Oman, rejecting direct talks but saying indirect negotiations remain possible. Trump's threats come amid growing fears that Iran is rapidly advancing its nuclear capabilities. U.S. and Israeli officials warn Tehran may only be weeks away from producing a deliverable nuclear weapon, although Iran denies it is seeking such arms. Trump also took aim at Russia in the NBC interview, expressing frustration over President Vladimir Putin's refusal to agree to a ceasefire in Ukraine and threatening new tariffs on Russian oil. Meanwhile, Axios reported that President Trump is planning a visit to Saudi Arabia. The trip, expected to be his first official foreign visit since returning to office, is aimed at finalizing a potential $1 trillion Saudi investment in the U.S., including major defense deals. While Trump previously hinted at expanding the Abraham Accords, Axios noted that the Saudi-Israeli normalization remains stalled over Riyadh's demand for Palestinian statehood, a condition Israel rejects. Israeli officials told Axios that no stop in Israel is currently planned as part of the trip.
And mixed emotions here in Israel as this ground offensive continues to expand. And joining us now to discuss is Major General retired Yaakov Amidror, former head of the National Security Council, current fellow at Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and JINSA Strategic Center in Washington, D.C. Thanks so much for joining us today. Now, tell us what the significance of expanding this ground offensive is. What does this mean exactly, and what should people expect?
It means the new renewing the war in Gaza means that the diplomatic efforts failed, and by diplomacy we cannot get our hostages, and the only way to get them is to make a war in which the IDF will go all over the Gaza Strip, put its hands on the members of Hamas, deteriorate the capabilities of Hamas to fight inside Gaza Strip, and reaching the hostages in the military way to release them. But the combination of releasing the hostages and the war means that Israel is determined to destroy Hamas totally. Totally means that it remains as an idea. It remains as a dream. But all the members of Hamas will be disarmed or will be killed or both. And Hamas, as a military organization, is an organization who can control the Gaza Strip, will not exist. This is the meaning of this is the goal of the new operation.
So Defense Minister Israel Katz said this morning troops will move to capture extensive territory that will be added to the State of Israel security areas. Tell us, what does this mean? Is he referring to expanding a buffer zone between Israel and Gaza?
Because he didn't elaborate, I really don't understand what does it mean. The only logic that there is in those words of the Minister of Defense is extending the buffer zone around Gaza. I don't see any other goal that might be fulfilled by extending or whatever land into Israel. But the truth is that without this word, even if we don't have any plan to extend the buffer zone, this stage will lead to conquering the whole Gaza Strip, because this is the only way that we can be sure that afterwards Hezbollah will not exist as a military organization in the Gaza Strip, and that we have a chance to get to the hostages. Today, Hamas is not relevant as a threat to Israel. We are fighting Hamas in the last almost 2 or 3 weeks, and he succeeded to launch with the Islamic Jihad together 7 or 8 missiles into Israel. That's all. Not even one raid towards the border of Israel. and the resistance inside Gaza is very limited. So as the military structure of Hamas was destroyed, now we have to go after all the groups one by one to identify them, to find them within the civilians, and to kill them all. And that will be a long operation, less extensive in using firepower. It will be more an effort to go building after building to identify them and to kill them and to destroy all the remnants of the underground system which still exists in Gaza.
Now, the IDF issued an evacuation order for the area in between Rafah and Khan Yunis, a location where ground troops have not yet operated in. Why is it the first time troops will be entering this zone, and what is likely the goal here?
Some parts of that had been penetrated by the IDF in the past, but the IDF retreated from all these areas. So practically, it's we have to take it again, and we know that some of the systems still exist, and Hamas try to recruit more terrorists into the line. So it will be an effort to recapture the area, and then to isolate it and to identify all members of Hamas and to kill them if will be any resistance.
So Katz also said this morning he's calling on the residents of Gaza to remove Hamas and return all of the hostages. Now, we know unprecedented large anti-Hamas protests took place in Gaza last week, but we're starting to learn details about a 22-year-old man who was murdered by Hamas for participating in one of those protests. Now, his family told the Free Press news outlet their son was stabbed 170 times with screwdrivers and knives. His body was mutilated and tortured and eventually thrown off of a tall building. It's absolutely horrifying to even just recount this on our show, but these are the realities of who Hamas really is. Now, when details like this come to light, what more can it tell us about Hamas and how they operate inside of the Gaza Strip?
As I said, Hamas is not relevant as a threat towards Israel at the present. What we have to make sure and to guarantee for the future that it will not be stronger in the future and will not be a threat to Israel in the future. And for that, we have to reconquer the whole Gaza Strip and to eliminate all its remnants, including the people, the commanders, all the terrorists, the infrastructure, the underground infrastructure, and so on and so forth. What this story tells us is that Hamas is still strong enough to control Gaza. The people of Gaza are not strong enough to stand against it, because whoever will stand against Hamas will be assassinated immediately, will be tortured, his family will suffer, and so on and so forth. So if we want to save the life of as many people in Gaza as possible, and to make free Gaza from the atrocities of Hamas, if we want to give the people of Gaza any chance to rebuild Gaza and to live in normal life and not under terror organization which don't hesitate with these atrocities to save his control, it's the only way is to destroy Hamas totally. In a way, Israel is now fighting less for Israel because I said it's not a threat to Israel today, and it is more about the ability of the region to bring the Palestinians in Gaza, the ability to rebuild Gaza.
Well, thank you so much for your perspective today, all of your time, especially as all of this continues to develop inside of the Gaza Strip.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and the Chag Sameach.
And our final story tonight, a positive story. Amit Susana, a survivor of Hamas captivity, is being honored with the U.S. State Department's International Woman of Courage Award. Abducted from her home in Kibbutz Kfar Aza on October 7, 2023, she endured 55 days in captivity. After her release, she bravely went public with accounts of the sexual violence she endured, becoming the first hostage to do so. Her testimony, delivered at the UN and beyond, has raised global awareness of sexual violence as a weapon of war and given other survivors the courage to share their stories. In a statement, Susanna says she accepts the award on behalf of the women who fought in the war and those who endured captivity, finding strength in each other to survive the unimaginable. The State Department commends her bravery, saying she has used her voice to shed light on the trauma faced by hostages and continues to fight for their release. A trained attorney with years of experience in intellectual property law, Susanna is now dedicating herself to ensuring the world does not forget those still in Hamas captivity. She will receive the award in a ceremony alongside 7 other women recognized for their extraordinary courage.
And now a remarkable discovery by a little girl on a family trip in Israel has unveiled a piece of ancient history. A 3-year-old found a rare Canaanite scarab seal dating back nearly 3,800 years. The find connects modern Israel with its deep historical roots. ILTV's Ariella Lachiani reports.
It was a routine family trip to Tel Aviv, a historical site near Beit Shemesh, when 3.5-year-old Ziv Nitzan from Moshav Ramot Meir made an unexpected discovery.
אנחנו הלכנו בשביל כאן. זיו התכופפה בין כל ה-70,000 אבנים שהיו לידה, והרימה אבן. ואז היא שפשפה את החול, וראתה שמשהו שונה באבן.
The special finding turned out to be a scarab amulet from the Middle Bronze Age, around 3,800 years ago. Scarabs like this were used as seals and amulets in ancient Canaan and Egypt, often bearing religious symbols or signs of status. The shape, inspired by the dung beetle, symbolized creation and new life in Egyptian culture. The Nitzan family quickly reported the find to the Israel Antiquities Authority, which confirmed its significance. In recognition of her contribution, Ziv was awarded a certificate for good citizenship. The seal will soon be displayed in a special exhibition for Passover, alongside other artifacts from the Egyptian and Canaanite periods. Tel Aviv, known for its connection to the biblical Battle of David and Goliath, has been under excavation for nearly 15 years. Archaeologists have uncovered city walls, agricultural installations, and other evidence of a thriving ancient civilization.
אנחנו מאוניברסיטת תל אביב חופרים את האתר הזה כבר כמעט 15 שנה. ובחפירות שלנו עולה שבתקופת הברונזה התיכונה והברונזה המאוחרת זאת הייתה אחת הערים החשובות ביותר בשפלה. ולכן הממצא הזה של חרפושית מצטרף להמון ממצאים מצריים וממצאים שנעשו כמו ממצאים מצריים.
The discovery highlights the deep historical layers still waiting to be uncovered in Israel. As Passover approaches, visitors to the Israel Antiquities Authority's exhibition will have the opportunity to see Ziv's scarab up close, connecting the past with the present. A tiny discovery by a young child, now a window into a world nearly 4,000 years old.
For more of the latest updates from Israel, make sure to subscribe to our newsletter at iltv.tv or download the ILTV Plus app. That's it for ILTV's weekly review. Stay safe and see you next week.